Hello and welcome to this video on load testing Tableau server. Very often I get questions about how to scale or load test or stress test Tableau server using various tools and technologies that are available out of the market. While Tableau doesn't specifically recommend any third-party technology or even support any external third-party technology, given we often get these questions, I felt this video might help you understand what some of the customers and partners outside are doing with Tableau and some of the third-party technologies out there, but also sort of share some of my learnings as I went through this process myself of getting a load testing tool going with Tableau server. So in this particular video, I have Tableau Server 8.18 actually deployed out to my server. This is really not about scale testing, so it's not really a beefy server. I'm running a lot of the infrastructure on my laptop as well. So really the goal of this video is to help you understand and visualize and see what is possible and what customers and partners might be doing with technologies such as HP LoadRunner. So let's assume then for the scenario that you want to load test, you want to do the following. You want to log into Tableau server with your user credentials, and I'm not going to save the password here, and select the site that you're going against and very simply navigate to a certain set of reports. In this particular case, I'm just going to go navigate to the admin reports. So switch over to the admin tab, go to the server activity view, for example. And then once we're there, essentially navigate some of the tabs such as looking at the background tasks, or looking at user activity as an example. And then note that each one of these tabs we're going through doing a bunch of work on the Tableau server side. And then finally go out and sign out. So if this was a user scenario you had to load test, let's see how you might do that in LoadRunner using LoadRunner's True Client technology. All right, so let's minimize out of the browser and look at what it takes to get started with LoadRunner. So LoadRunner has actually several components. There is a virtual user generator, and what you're doing here is really recording your workload. So the scenario that we walked through earlier is essentially recorded within this particular virtual user generator technology. So here you see the various steps that I'm going to go through: navigate to the server, sign into the server, and I've done some parameterization of username and password. As I iterate through or loop through this particular script, each time I pick up a different username and log in. I wanted to show you a little bit of that automation in the video as well. Go through and click the OK button to pick the site, then you switch to the admin area, then you start to looking at the server activity view, the background tasks, etc. So first thing as a performance engineer I would do is essentially record that script and go through a debugging process to make sure that the recorded script plays back consistently. So in this particular case, I have that recording done already. I'm going to go through a quick replay of it. And part of this replay, I want to look and observe and see if there's any problems that the script itself has. I've gone through and done that already several times, and I've identified a few of the glitches that I ran through, but this is part of the script authoring experience that a performance engineer typically goes through. So we've navigated to the server link automatically, go into the background tasks, and so on and so forth. Now here what's happening is LoadRunner VUGen is looking for the little drop-down arrow. And every time I've run this, the situation I've gone into is it wasn't successfully able to find that control for many reasons, right? So there's multiple controls that look similar. For example, this drop-down looks similar to this drop-down. But in my case of authoring for the workload, I had to go in and validate for LoadRunner that that is the correct object that it's actually located. But once I go through it, it finds the exact UI element and interacts with that. So in this particular case, note that I've switched the username. The prior iteration when it was administrator, now it's a different user. But I go through the same set of steps. essentially what we're doing here is defining a workload, right? So with Tableau Server, either you're looking at views like these, or you're interacting with them, or doing other things. But all of those steps are really part of the performance engineers authoring experience that they have to go through to go ahead and create a load runner script such as this. Now, once you've recorded a script like that, I'm going to save it and exit out. What you have is really the virtual user generator creates a read-only script, essentially, that you can then play back as many times as you want. All right, let's move over from virtual user generator now to the load controller itself. So here, what Load Runner has is a software package called HP Load Runner controller. So let's go ahead and launch that. So the Load Runner controller is almost like a central place where you define your load scenarios and work through actually executing and looking at the results. So in this particular case, I have the TAS login logout scripts on the top left. Note that I can actually go ahead and record multiple different scripts, and in fact have multiple scripts defined or being used in a particular scenario. In this particular case, I just have one scenario for simplicity, and the load generator is installed locally on the box where I'm running Load Runner controller. My server is on a different VM, by the way. That's typically the best practice to load and scale test. So the load generator is a local host that's essentially going to take that workload that we've seen earlier and then play that back. And it's going to play back based on the definition of what you have in this scenario. For example, there are these actions that a particular virtual user would take through initialization, going through the number of V users that you want to start. So for example, let's go ahead and look at that. So in this particular case, we're saying start 10 virtual users, and either simultaneously or one V user every 5 seconds. And performance engineers can basically change this to sort of suit their goals or their scenarios appropriately for scale test. And then the duration, of course, is I'm running this for a minute just for the sake of the video, but essentially this is something that you can run longer or have other definitions of how long you want to run. Okay, so let's just go through and fire it up and see what happens. When I go to the Run tab, by the way, I see what's on the top left. I see the scenario group. So as the run progresses, I'll see the virtual users going through different stages. You see a set of scenario status to the top right in terms of number of virtual users, past transactions, failed transactions, etc. Let's kick this off. So as I start the scenario, we'll see the virtual users going through different stages here, and all of my status is initialized. And as we start to drive more users and collect data, you'll see the graphs that are here in the center of the screen start to populate. So top left graph showing me the running virtual users across the whole scenario. The bottom left is showing me the hits per second for the whole scenario, which is how many HTTP requests am I getting for the duration that we're going through here. And the bottom right is showing resources on the machine. And then the top right shows you the response time in seconds of the various transactions that are going through. So you see right now we have 10 virtual users that are going through the load scenario. Essentially, imagine these as 10 different virtual users that are taking the script and running through that script over and over again until they meet the criteria defined in the load scenario, and then they eventually stop. Okay, so in this particular case, notice that I've been running for about a minute and a half. 58 transactions have passed. Looks like there's some transactions failing. I'm not quite sure what those are, but we'll take a look at those as we go through the test here. Okay, so we're all done. Let's first take a look at what these failed transactions are. No errors is a good thing. I see the failed transactions. So here in this particular case, I'm seeing that the transaction called background tasks, this is the one that's actually failed every single time through the load test. Now, This could mean any number of things, right? So from it being a potentially a script issue where during authoring um, perhaps it wasn't able to recognize one of the UI controls similar to the one that I showed you earlier on, or other things going on. Let me quickly show you what I've learned going through the process. So for example, if I go to develop scripts back here, this is the development mode for authoring. And what I see, I'm going to go find the background tasks area here. That's the particular step that is causing problems for us. And if I look at transactions, for example, I see that I begin the transaction when the action started. And for end of the transaction for background tasks, the event that I'm looking for is document loaded. Let's go edit that and take a look at the options here. So for background tasks, I look at the event. I see there's lots of different options on when LoadRunner as a tool will consider this particular action completed. So in cases where there asynchronous activity going on, your document might be partially loaded, but the viz itself might be rendering and coming up in the background. Situations like that, this is probably a bad idea. What you might want to do is pick step network completed as the option here, which makes sure that the entire network operation is finished. Now let's go back and close that out and save the script and do a quick rerun of that to see whether that particular this particular issue goes away. So all I've done is I've changed the background task transaction end from document load to actually making sure the network is actually completely the network call is completed. So let's see what happens when I run through this. And again, this is one example of how you might debug an issue, and every technology out there is going to have different ways of working through these sets of things. So you're better off having an expert in that particular technology working with you if you're going through a load testing project with Tableau Server using LoadRunner. So in this particular case, it's gone through, finished the iterations, and now you see that the background task is actually completed successfully, and it took about 1.7 seconds in this particular case. So if I rerun that load scenario, I'm confident that it's going to work, but I wanted to show you one example of failures with LoadRunner TrueClient and how you might go through handling that. So in summary, I want to leave you with a few thoughts. One is that every load testing technology out there will have its own set of features and capabilities that will often require the expertise in that particular tool set. So make sure when you work through on projects where you want to load test Tableau Server that you have that expertise at hand. Otherwise, your projects are going to take a long time. Second is be aware that Tableau Server is enterprise class in that it's architected for scaling up and scaling out. You can scale up and support more users by adding cores to the system or adding more machines to scale out horizontally. And a lot of Tableau Server scalability is documented in our white paper that's available online at www.tablewsoftware.com. And the last point is if you need to scale test Tableau Server in your environment, you can pretty much do that with any tooling of your choice. However, having the expertise in that particular tooling is going to be critical. Make sure that you design your tests in the context of Tableau Server scalability architecture and be familiar with it as you embark on those projects. Well, with that, I will take leave. I hope this video was useful for you. Best of luck with your projects. This is Nilesh Kamkolkar with Tableau Software signing off.